Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikas Swami Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavani Paschatya Deshitarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, Hare Krishna. So today we are continuing the section of the Vedas, looking into the topic of the Vedas in our Vaishnava epistemology seminar. And so far we have established Shabda Praman, the Vedas, Apaurushaya Shabda Praman, as superior to the other types of Pramanas. Right? And now we are analyzing what is Apaurushaya Shabda Pramana. Apaurushaya Shabda Pramana is nothing but the Vedas. Anything that comes, Apaurushaya, comes from Apaurushaya. What is Apaurushaya?
Not of the material.
Okay? Krishna. Apaurushaya is not Paurushaya, not human being, not mortal. And that refers to Krishna. Because Krishna has no material body. Although the devotees can also be called as Apaurushaya, the original Apaurushaya, or the Apaurushaya, is Krishna himself. Therefore, Apaurushaya Shabda Pramana. Okay, so, and we saw that the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad states how the four Vedas are emanations from the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, now we saw how the Vedas are handed down. That the Vedas are handed down from Brahma down to Narada, Vyasa, then Vyasa split the four Vedas. We saw the three departments of the Vedas, which are Kandas. Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Upasana Kanda. Okay, so, and then what is Karma Kanda?
Fruitive activities, sacrifices, go to the heavenly planets.
Karma Kanda is sacrifices, fruitive activities for achieving material happiness. Methodologies and procedures in the Vedas for achieving material happiness. Or also getting relieved from sin. Because part of karma, part of maintaining good karma is to get relieved of bad karma. So prayaschitta is included. Okay. Then, what is Jnana Kanda?
Studying Upanishads.
Jnana Kanda is transcendental knowledge. Can you give me something more?
It's basically, it tells you how to detach yourself from the material world.
Okay.
Understanding the absolute truth.
Understanding the absolute truth. Jnana Kanda is meant to understand the absolute truth. Therefore, the Jnana Kanda section relates to which part of the Vedas? The Upanishads. And then the Upasana Kanda. What is the Upasana Kanda? The Upasana Kanda, no, the Srimad Bhagavatam is above the Upasana Kanda. It's above the three Kandas. So the Upasana Kanda is called devotional service because it's meant to culminate in devotional service. But the Upasana Kanda basically gives methodologies of worship of different demigods and Mishra Bhakti also is part of the Upasana Kanda. Worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with not fully pure motivations, with material attachments. When that devotional service becomes free from all material attachment and executed simply out of love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then it is the perfection of Upasana Kanda rather it becomes above the Upasana Kanda itself. And that is the platform on which the Srimad Bhagavatam is based on. Okay, so we saw those 3 Kandas. And then we saw 4 divisions of the Vedas. Yes?
I have a question. So you're saying, so the Upasana Kanda has worship of the demigods, and then what makes that any different from the Kama Kanda?
Good question. The Upasana Kanda, because there are people, maybe surprising, there are people who worship the demigods out of a sense of duty and out of a sense of allegiance. And in fact, sometimes that worship of the demigods looks so similar to Bhakti itself. There are, for instance, if you in South India, there are saints called the Nayanmars. These Nayanmars, there are 64 Nayanmars, there are 64 great devotees of Lord Shiva. They've composed so many poems in glorification of Lord Shiva. And they live like mendicants. They were just devotees of Lord Shiva. They sang, they chanted, they danced. Very similar. And in fact, especially with the worship of Lord Shiva, this becomes very prominent because Shiva is neither Jiva nor is he Vishnu. So, it is stated that by our acharyas, they explain that if you can hear this when Gokul Chandra Prabhu explains his Goloka chart, he explains the position of Shiva Loka. Shiva Loka is between the material world and the spiritual world. It's everything in between. And that's the abode of Lord Shiva. And so there, the devotees of Lord Shiva, the pure devotees of Lord Shiva, who just want to associate with Lord Shiva, go there. And then Gokul Prabhu quotes from our acharyas that by the mercy of Lord Shiva, some of those devotees get elevated to Vaikuntha because they see there Shiva is worshipping Vishnu, and then they worship Vishnu along with him. And then they go back on back to Bharat. So in this way, the Upasana Kanda touches these sections. It's not Bhakti because they're worshipping Shiva. Is understandable? Especially when you come to more subordinate demigods, then you will not find so much of this Upasana Kanda. But the most important demigods you will find. That many similarities can be seen with Bhakti. Okay? Alright. One thing that distinguishes devotional service to Vishnu from other types of worship is the understanding of the absolute truth. Jnana Vairagya Yuktaya. Even a Kanishta Adhikari, he has some knowledge and some renunciation. Something is there, not too much. Like at least the Kanishta Adhikari is expected to have renounced demigod worship. Some renunciation is there. So, but the demigod worship, they don't have a clear understanding of the absolute truth. So that's one difference, major difference. Okay. So the 4 divisions of the Vedas, Samhitas, Aranyakas, Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishad. So what are they? They describe right there. Samhitas are? They are prayers. You learn different prayers, you chant different mantras, you learn different things. For instance, for you just to understand, the Sandhya Vandanam forms part of the Samhitas. The Brahmachari learns. The Brahmana Grahastha section is the Yajna portion. And the Aranyakas are forest treatises. What are forest treatises?
Going into the forest.
Yeah, what are they?
It's a knowledge of how to live in the forest. Knowledge of how to live in the forest. Knowledge of how to live in the forest.
No, they give you specific ways as to how you can actually worship and worship Krishna and intensify. What is it?
No, well, you follow vows. You're following vows.
Giving up desires and moving into the forest.
Giving up desires. The Vanaprastha stage is meant to imbibe austerity, is to imbibe this principle of austerity. I've been living in the material world like a grihastha and been trying to enjoy my senses. Now in the Vanaprastha stage, I'm trying to curtail my senses. And the Aranyaka stage, the Aranyaka section of the Vedas has instructions about all these things. Okay, you eat this roots, you do this. For instance, methodologies of fasting, different types of vratas. You see, these are all part of the Aranyaka section. Okay, this month, you take only this. For 4 days, you eat only one handful of rice. Or you eat only roots, something like this. And yeah.
Did Dhritarashtra did that one? Dhritarashtra.
Dhritarashtra did that, yes.
That's what he did, right?
Yeah, that's what he did. Good. Dhritarashtra did that, Bharat Maharaj did that, and several other examples. So, and then the Upanishads form the final portion of the Vedas, which discuss about the absolute truth, which give the knowledge of the absolute truth. So Jnana and Vairagya. So Vairagya and Jnana. So the Jnana section forms the Upanishad. So then we saw how the 4 divisions and the 3 departments are related to each other. Okay? So in this way, the Karma Kanda is related to the Samhita and the Brahmana sections. The Aranyaka forms the Upasana Kanda and the Upanishads form the Jnana Kanda. Which is why distinctly you see that difference between Upasana and Jnana Kanda as the Aranyakas, because you don't necessarily need to have knowledge of the absolute truth to perform austerities. You understand that, the material world is miserable and that I have to elevate myself. I have to go above. But the Jnana Kanda, so therefore devotional service is actually above all this because it takes Jnana and Upasana and it takes you further onto the platform of worshipping Krishna out of pure love. Okay? Then we saw how the 4 Vedas are divided according to what? How did Vyasadeva classify these into 4?
Different sections of the Vedas, right? So like it's right there. Like it's for prayers,
right.
For hymns. Yeah.
So they constitute. See, Prabhupada explains. They constitute 4. They're given each a purpose. So each Veda has a purpose or a particular topic that they cover. So the Rig Veda constitutes primarily of prayers. Yajur Veda primarily of hymns for
Oblations.
Sacrifice. Primarily covers the sacrifice section. Most of the sacrifices that we perform, that you might have heard, Ashwamedha Yajna, Putrakameshti Yajna, these are all found mostly in the Yajur Veda. And then you have the Samaveda, which consists of further hymns, but prayers, but songs. The aspect of music in worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead forms part of the Samaveda. So that aspect so anyways, we'll look into Samaveda a little more. But they're all found in Samaveda. So, and Atharva is everything else. Maintenance of the body, maintenance of the world. And so Prabhupada explains how Vyasadeva and the Bhagavatam explains actually. You have the 12th canto?
It's right here.
So the Vyasadeva separated the Vedas, the mantras of the Vedas into 4, just like a person separates a collection of jewels. Okay? So now we look into the Rig Veda. This is where we start today. Alright. So, the Rig Veda was given to Paila Rishi. This is one of the 4 disciples of Vyasa. So, the 4 are, okay. Oh, yeah, alright. So, the 4 is Paila, Vaisampayana, Jaimini, and Sumantu. So, Paila received Rig Veda, Vaisampayana, Yajur Veda, Jaimini received the Samaveda, and Sumantu received the Atharva Veda. These are the four primary disciples of Vyasa. And so, what consists of the Rig Veda? Consists of 21 branches. 21 branches, 21 Samhitas, 21 Brahmanas, 21 Aranyakas and 21 Upanishads. So, some examples. Now, where do you find this? You just Google. Easy. You can see this. It's common knowledge. It's scholars have accepted this. So if you want to know, you can see. So the Valakilya Samhita is a famous Samhita of the Rig Veda, which consists of the famous Purusha Sukta prayers. The Purusha Sukta is found in Mandala 10, Sukta 90. And among the Brahmanas, the Aitareya Brahmana and the Sankhayana Brahmana, you will find, if you Google these words on the Veda base, you will find that Prabhupada quotes from them here and there in his purports. But the Acharyas would have quoted from these sections. So now the reason is, sometimes you just say, Prabhupada said, this Brahmana it's quoted in this Veda. What is that? Where is that? What is it? The idea of the seminar is to give a little perspective on these things that we read. Prabhupada is referring to all these texts. What are these texts? So that's what we're looking into here. And then Aranyaka, Aitareya Aranyaka and Upanishads. Aitareya Upanishad, Muktika Upanishad and Krishna Upanishad. These are famous Upanishads from the Rig Veda. Prabhupada, and what is Muktika famous for? Muktika gives in teachings of Lord Chaitanya, in talks to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Prabhupada quotes the Muktika Upanishad as containing the list of 108 Upanishads. The Muktika Upanishad contains a list of 108 Upanishads. Although actually there are more than 108 Upanishads. There are more than 1,000 Upanishads. You'll see that. Okay. Now, video time. So, I was going to play a little section of the Purusha Sukta prayer. We can see how it's similar to some of the things we see and we have read in Srila Prabhupada's books. Okay. Mirror built-in display. Alright, share content. Oh, okay, it's sharing already. Alright. Okay, so
Is it there?
So, is it visible? We should see. What's it called? Is that visible?
Yeah.
So, this is the Purusha Sukta. As we can see here. Let's see. No, the reason I don't want to put full screen is because the WebEx viewers will not be able to see it. Okay. So, you've heard this Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti. This comes in the Purusha Sukta. So, I'm going to... It's a very transcendental sound. Vishnu is worshipped. The demigods chanted these prayers. Sadhunim Vishmato So, you can see here, the Purusha has 1,000 heads, he has 1,000 eyes, 1,000 feet, spread all over the universe, beyond the count with 10 fingers. It rings a bell? The universal form. This is exactly what Arjuna saw. Exactly what Arjuna saw. Can someone pull that verse up? There's too many programs running on my laptop right now. If you can pull up the verse where Arjuna says, I see so many heads, so many arms, so many legs. Which demigod is displaying this? Even Brahma doesn't display. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita contains the essence of Vedic knowledge. This is stated in the Vedas. Oh, he, Purusha Sukta. Purusha, this is the Purusha. The Purusha has 1,000 heads. There's 1,000 eyes. Has 1,000 feet. So then you see that connection. How the Vedas, how the Bhagavad Gita is actually reflecting. Krishna showed the universal form to Arjuna. So, forward it a little bit more. Too many things going on at the same time. Okay, not the first line. What is that? Padogosya vishwa bhutani tripadhasyandritandivi. What is that? About this world is 3/4 of the Purusha, but the quarter which this is world appears again and again. Where is that? Where is that found? Ekapad Vibhuti.
Yeah.
So we see this. The Brahma Samhita speaks of this. Right? How 3/4 of the world. What is that? 3/4. This is the spiritual world. 1/4 is the material world. Now you see, this is why I'm playing this is for you to understand. Anyways, you could read it also. Okay, alright. So here Arjuna is stating this. Aneka bahudara vyakta netram pashyami tvam sarvato antarupam nantam tamadhyam na punastavaadhim pashyami vishveshwara vishwarupam. O Lord of the universe, O universal form, I see in your body many arms, bellies, mouths and eyes expanded everywhere without limit. I see in you no end, no middle, no beginning. This is in line with what the Purusha Sukta states. And then you see, why I'm playing this is you see that coded language in the Vedas. What is it? Padosya vishwa bhutani tripadasya nritandivi. So, about this world is 3/4 of the Purusha, but this quarter this quarter which is in this world appears again and again. So, that's the material world and the spiritual world, but by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, this is very easily understood by us. This is not easily understood otherwise. Very difficult. And so many Brahmanas would be chanting the Purusha Sukta, but they would not know this. We are not chanting the Purusha Sukta, but we know this. This is the glory of the Vaishnavacharyas. That they have presented something that is so difficult, so that actually even the most qualified Brahmanas find very difficult to understand. But Mlechas, Yavanas and Chandalas and people who are lower than that of human species have no access to this knowledge. How? Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mantra, all this is revealed. That purification appears. This is why Nama is so great. Am I making sense here?
Yeah.
You know? So, all right. So we'll stop here. I don't want to play more of this. The devotees who want can see that. Okay. Now we'll continue our seminar. Separate display. Okay. All right. Now, Yajurveda was given to Vaisampayana Rishi. And, So there are two divisions here. What are the two divisions? Shukla Yajur and Krishna Yajur. Does anyone remember reading this in Prabhupada's books? No.
White and black.
Prabhupada would quote from Krishna Yajur Veda, Shukla Yajur Veda. This is a quote, there are quotes here. Anyways, what is it? How did that Veda split into two? Any story? Anything? Rings a bell? It's here. 12th canto.
Someone like vomits out the.
Yeah, good. So, well, that's pretty good.
Who's that? I forget.
It's pretty good.
What's his name? With a V? No. Like he vomits it out.
Okay, so let me just read it. I prefer reading than telling the story. Okay, it's a good bit of story here.
Yeah, he's rejected by his spiritual master.
Right, very good. Very good. Wow, good memory. Alright. So, what happens is, I made the wrong reference. Yajnavalkya, that's correct. That's correct. Okay. Let's see. Kind of missed it here.
What is it? His spiritual. They make him forget all the things.
Yeah.
He goes and does that posterity.
Yeah, no, I kind of missed the.
More than his spiritual.
Yeah.
So what happens is,
You want me to find
yes,
The
I
portion
would
that he
have
vomits,
just
that's
trying
just
to-
God.
right. So the story is okay. Here, I found it. All right. So what happens? Yajnavalkya, Vaisampayana gets the Yajurveda from his guru
Yes.
Vyasadeva. Then what happens? The disciples of Vaisampayana, this is text 61, chapter 6 of the 12th canto. The disciples of Vaisampayana become authorities in the Yajurveda. They were known as the Charakas because they executed strict vows to free their guru from his sin of killing a Brahmana. So there's an instance where Vaisampayana accidentally kills a Brahmana. And he requests his disciples to execute severe austerities so that they can free him from the sin of killing a Brahmana. And what happens? Yajnavalkya goes up to his guru and says, once Yajnavalkya, one of the disciples of Vaisampayana, said, "Oh Master, how much benefit will be derived from the feeble endeavors of these weak disciples of yours? I will personally perform some outstanding penance." And Adrasdas, the spiritual master Vaisampayana, became angry and said, "Go away from here. Enough of you, O disciple who insults Brahmanas. Furthermore, you must immediately give back everything I have taught you." So he found Vaisampayana found Yajnavalkya to be too puffed up. He said, "You're too puffed up. You insult Brahmanas. Brahmanas who are executing vows, and you think you're so superior? Go away. And not only that, now whatever I taught you, you have to spit it out. You have to give it back." So then Yajnavalkya, the son of Devarata, then vomited the mantras of the Yajurveda and went away from there. The assembled disciples looked greedily upon these Yajur hymns and assumed the form of partridges and picked them up. Now, why did they assume the form of these divisions of the Yajurveda? Therefore, became known as the most beautiful Taittiriya Samhita, hymns collected by the partridges. And so, now, why did they assume the form of partridges?
So they could eat it.
They could eat it, but why? They could just eat it just
They
like
have sweet voices.
No, not because of that. Because as human beings, you're not supposed to eat
vomit.
you're not supposed to eat someone else's vomit.
Yeah.
Especially what to speak of humans. But if you assume a form of another animal, then that's not the rule anymore. So they assumed the form of partridges and they ate those mantras. And then, my dear Brahmana, Shaunaka, Yajnavalkya then desired to find new Yajur mantras, unknown even to his spiritual master. With this in mind, he offered attentive worship to the powerful Lord of the Sun. So then he offers prayers to the sun god.
Is it like Aditya?
No, it's not the Aditya. This is different. And then what happens is, Sutta Goswami said, satisfied by such glorification, the powerful sun god assumed the form of a horse and presented to the sage Yajnavalkya Yajur mantras previously unknown in human society. So that's the story of how the Yajur Vedas split into two. Another pastime of the Yajur Vedas. So the Yajur Veda consists of, actually I did a mistake here. This is a typo. It's 100 Samhitas, 100 Brahmanas, 100 Aranyakas and 100 Upanishads. Not 21. There's a mistake there. So, and the Yajur Veda forms the chunk of the Vedas, and and here you have S, S and K. So, which means Shukla Yajur and Krishna Yajur. So you have the Madhyandina Samhita. Prabhupada quotes here in purport to 114.3, 1.4.13 purport. There is no difference between the Vedic mantras and what is explained in the Puranas and Itihasas. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, it is mentioned in the Madhyandina Shruti that all Vedas, namely Sama, Atharva, Rig, Yajur, Puranas, Itihasas, Upanishads, etc., are emanations from the breathing of the Supreme Being. So that thing where it's stated that the Vedas are emanations from the breathing of the Supreme Lord is stated in this Madhyandina Samhita. So, and it's also stated in that Madhyandina Samhita that the Puranas and the Itihasas are also like that. So, it's an important point to note that the Puranas and Upanishads also are mentioned. Okay? Then you have the Brahmanas, you have the Shatapatha Brahmana, which is very famous Brahmana. In the Shukla Yajur, you have the Maitrayana Brahmana, which forms part of the Krishna Yajur Veda. Then the Taittiriya Aranyaka, which was stated. Taittiriya forms the part of the Krishna Yajur Veda. Why is it Krishna?
It may be because it has songs from Krishna.
No.
It was black.
Because it's black. Because we just read that they are known as the Taittiriyas. We just read how what he spat out is known as Taittiriya Samhita, Taittiriya Aranyaka. So the Taittiriya portion is called Krishna Yajur. Krishna Yajur Veda. Whatever he spat out is black. So, and then the Upanishads, the Ishopanishad, which we are going to cover soon, forms part of the Shukla Yajur. The Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, famous, very famous Upanishads. Shukla Yajur Veda, Taittiriya Upanishad, Krishna Yajur. Shvetashvatara, Krishna Yajur, Narayana, Katha Upanishad. So, famous Upanishads. Okay, then Samaveda was given to Jaimini Rishi. This is split into 1,000 branches. Now, just because it's split into 1,000 branches doesn't mean it's more than that of the Yajur Veda. It's just split into more. So here, famous Samhitas are Ranayaniya Samhita, and then Brahmanas, Panchavimsha Brahmana, Shadvimsha Brahmana, and Chandogya Brahmana. Chandogya Upanishad and the Chandogya Aranyakas are found here. Chandogya Upanishad, another famous.
Yeah.
Muktika Upanishad, Keno Upanishad is also found. These are famous. You will find these in Prabhupada's books all over. You will find Prabhupada quoting from all these Upanishads. So the Acharyas quote these Upanishads. These are important Upanishads. Okay. What is the speciality of Samaveda over the other Vedas? Bhagavad Gita. Rings a bell?
Oh, yeah. Krishna says of the Vedas, hold on, I forget the word.
You're close.
Amongst the Vedas, he said it's the Samaveda.
Amongst the Vedas, he says he's Samaveda. 10:22. Vedanam Samavedosmi. Why Krishna says Vedanam Samavedosmi? Because the Samaveda is so beautiful. It's the most beautiful Veda to hear. Okay, now we'll play another video.
Yes.
So, before we play the video, I want to ask, what is now the Brahma Gayatri?
Yes.
Famous Gayatri. Can we chant it without the Pranavam? Pranavam is... Anyways, you can chant also. We'll chant. Okay, what is the Brahma Gayatri? Bhur Swaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyona Prachodayat. Correct? Now the Yajur Veda, this is how you chant it. Bhurbhuva swaha tatsavidurvarenyam bhargo devasya dhimahi dhiyo yo na prachodayat. This is Yajurveda chanting. This is the meter. You have to notice that there is a meter here. See, when you just chant it like that, you can say Bhurbhuva swaha tatsavidurvarenyam bhargo devasya dhimahi dhiyo yo na prachodayat. But when you chant it in the Yajurveda meter, it becomes Bhurbhuva swaha tatsavidurvarenyam bhargo devasya dhimahi dhiyo yo na prachodayat. This is a meter. How is it chanted in the Samaveda? Very different. Please pay attention. This is interesting, this is informative, but devotees want is interesting stuff. It might be a little boring also. But this is knowledge that one can learn. The differences between the Vedas, it's not that we are not associating with these kind of things. We chant these mantras. Okay. So, one thing about the Vedas, you might think, who are these Brahmanas, Mayavadis or something like that. The thing about the Vedas, sorry. Thank you for reminding me that. Okay. So you might think, why are we playing chants? Because there's one Sri Vaishnava sitting over there. But this is the point. The Vedas are common. Before you decide whether you are a Sri Vaishnava, or you are a Mayavadi, or you are a Smarta, or whatever you are, you learn the Vedas, as if you are born as a Brahmana. Both the Sri Vaishnavas, Madhvas, Mayavadis, everyone learns the same Vedas. Because the Veda is one. How you interpret it, that's a different thing. But the Vedas are one, and they are emanations from this breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there is no question of who chants it, because the understanding can be different, but the chant is the same. So, the Vedas, because the aspect of Vedas is preservation, the main thing about Vedas is preservation, therefore the Vedas can be chanted by a qualified person. Qualified means they learnt it properly. That means you just can't chant the Vedas like however you want. And anyone cannot chant it. Because if you chant those mantras wrongly, you get a negative effect. So therefore there is a set of qualifications for chanting the Vedas. There is a different set of qualifications for chanting the holy name. But the set of qualifications to chant the Vedas is to just chant it according to the proper meter, is that you should be qualified as a Brahmana, you should have the characteristics of a Brahmana to chant it, and then you may chant. So, now you will hear the Brahma Gayatri, the Samaveda. See how different it sounds, very different. Now they went to another mantra. You see the difference?
In their fingers, they like keep.
This is a meter. You have to play a meter. You see, if you learn classical music, then you have a meter that you have to maintain. Now it's maintained by instruments. You tick, 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 tick. You have this thing in maintaining. But only in Samaveda you have this thing where they're literally singing it. So you have ragas that are intertwined with the mantra. So same Brahma Gayatri, chanted very differently. So it's an example of how the Vedas they're very distinctly different to each other. Okay. Go back to our seminar. All right. Okay, Atharva Veda, 9 branches, given to Sumantu Rishi. Famous Samhita, Shaunaka Samhita. Famous Brahmanas are Gopata Brahmana. The Aranyakas all are lost. The Atharva Veda is one of the most lost Vedas. Among them, Atharva is. It's very difficult to find Atharva Veda Brahmana. Very difficult. And Upanishads, there are some famous Upanishads here. Mandukya, Prashna Upanishad, Nrsimhathapani, and Chaitanya Upanishad. Where did we get this Chaitanya Upanishad? There's a story of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He hears one time, when he is in Orissa, that he hears that some Atharva Veda Brahmanas are chanting Atharva Veda. So immediately he goes there and he starts taking notes. And at that point of time, they recited the Chaitanya Upanishad. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote it down. Now it's lost.
What?
Because and many times Gokul Prabhu was explaining, sometimes in India if you go, especially in South India, they are very, very meticulous about this. So what happens is a particular family is reciting a particular section of say one Veda. So Sama Veda, this section, this portion being chanted by this particular family. And then in the news it comes, they have a newsletter, some Sanskrit university, there's a Sanskrit university in Chennai. And they publish newsletters, and the Veda Parayana groups, they publish newsletters and things like that. And they publish over there, in this village, this Brahmana was the last known person chanting this particular Veda has passed away.
Oh my.
So it's been lost, finished.
Whoa. Because they don't write it down.
So most of the time if they know a person like that, they would have written it down, but the methodology of chanting is lost.
You can't record it.
See, look at how the Sama Veda is recited. If you don't teach it, but just by looking at a book, you cannot figure it out. You cannot figure it out. This is how parampara, you see that system of parampara is so etched into Vedic culture that if you don't learn from your guru, it's finished. You cannot learn. Where's the question of picking up a book and looking at Google and learning? What nonsense. You cannot learn the Vedas like this.
Yeah.
And the point is, it might look, the Sama Veda is very complex, maybe I cannot learn it like that, but the Bhagavad Gita is not so complex, let me pick it up and read. No. The point is, even though the Bhagavad Gita, the Itihasas and Puranas are easier to read, still the principle that you have to learn it from a guru still stands. Otherwise it's inaccessible. It's locked. It's locked. It's locked in a really amazing manner. And it's lost means it's lost. So, so the Chaitanya Upanishad was being chanted, and the Chaitanya Upanishad talks of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's why it's called Chaitanya Upanishad. And therefore Bhaktivinoda Thakur quotes from it. And therefore there is an Upanishad, but it's not. So it was being chanted hundreds of years even before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. But now that Upanishad is lost. So when you go to some Sri Vaishnava, or you go to Madhva, Chaitanya Upanishad, who is Chaitanya Upanishad? We don't even know where it exists. But just because we don't know how it exists and where it exists doesn't mean that it didn't exist. So the Chaitanya Upanishad, this was by mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
But is it still, this is like,
It's lost.
that's also lost from Bhaktivinoda Thakur?
Well, the persons who were chanting it is lost. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote it down.
Oh, so it's still around.
It's there. We have it. We quote Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Whatever Bhaktivinoda Thakur has taken notes of. Whether it's the whole Upanishad or not, I'm not exactly aware. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur took very important notes
Where do we
from
find
hearing
it?
it. Huh?
Where do we find it?
He quotes it in his books, like the in Jaiva Dharma, and I think he also quotes it in Navadip Dham Mahatmya, like this. Bhaktivinoda Thakur notes it down. See, now we should understand, when Bhaktivinoda Thakur heard Atharva Veda is going enchanted, he goes there. Why would we think our acharyas, they're going to go and heard a Vedic chanting? Doesn't sound like something that our acharyas would do. But the point is, our acharyas were in line, they understood the importance of the Vedas. So like this, there's a very amazing story, right? Okay, so what's left of Shruti? So what did we hear? All this is Shruti. Right? Everything that we saw, so far the 4 Vedas, these constitute Shruti. And so what is left of Shruti? So totally, you have, if you add up all the Samhitas, the Brahmanas and the Aranyakas and Upanishads, you have 1130 Samhitas, 1130 Brahmanas, 1130 Aranyakas, 1130 Upanishads. Of these, 11 Samhitas, 18 Brahmanas, 7 Aranyakas and 220 Upanishads are remaining. And even among those 220 Upanishads, many of them are not complete. So you have Upanishads like this. Some of the Upanishads that are accepted, even though they are not part of the 11, so there are 11 main Upanishads that Shankaracharya picks to comment. For example, Kalisantarana Upanishad is accepted by the Sri Vaishnavas. Is there. But what is Kalisantarana Upanishad? Only 4 verses, that's all. Over. Upanishad is over. So the Kalisantarana Upanishad is there. Like this. So, most of it is lost. And there is no way to recover. Now, what does this mean? What does this mean? It means, if Krishna says, what does Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita about understanding the Vedas?
Veda
Vedashta sarver ahameva vedya. By reading all the Vedas, ahameva vedya, I should be understood. But if you don't have something complete, how will you understand?
Then Krishna reveals himself.
See, you get the point? This is why going to Shruti, now Shankaracharya picked 11. And the Vaishnava Acharyas, they decided to comment on these 11 just to prove that even through these 11, Narayana is revealed. But the point is, they might argue, where is the evidence that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an incarnation of Krishna? But it is there, but you have to, if you have the complete Vedas, then it might be possible to get it. But if you don't have it, then what's the point of referring to Shruti? We can refer to whatever is there, but we have to support whatever is found in Smriti. So this is where the point is, slowly we are arriving as to the conclusion as to how Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, this is the essence. This contains everything. The Bhagavad Gita is preserved as it is, and it contains everything. Therefore, there is no need to worry. Therefore, you might see how these controversial statements that our acharyas sometimes make. If everything is lost, let these 3 books be remaining. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. If Bhagavad Gita is lost, then let Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita remain. If Srimad Bhagavatam is also lost, just let the Chaitanya Charitamrita remain. And there is still no loss to the world. There is so much loss, so much Veda. So look how much is lost. Brahmanas, every time they lament when the last family is... Why the last family went? Not that because the son didn't have. So I said a Brahmana, Samaveda, this particular, this mandala, this sukta, this particular Brahmana chanting, last person has passed away. Why? His son is still there. But his son was sent to engineering college.
He became nice.
Learned this mundane education. Forgot the Vedas. Finished. Gone. My forefathers are also example of this, including myself. My father didn't chant, my grandfather didn't chant. We don't even know what our forefathers chanted. We probably know because when we chant the Abhivadya, there's something, but there's some vague idea. So it's lost. And this is sinful. This is how Brahmanas incur sin also, because we are severe. The Brahmanas are given the task of preservation. So why are we talking all these things? Why do we chant the Bhagavatam every day? Why do we have a Bhagavatam class every day? This is part of preservation. Why do we do Harinam? It's also part of preservation. We'll come to this. So distributing books is preservation. Is duty of a Brahmana. Preservation of the Veda. The Brahmana is very concerned. We have to preserve, we have to preserve, we have to preserve, we have to preserve. Preservation is so important. And that's how they become very dear to Krishna. Because they are preserving His words, they are preserving His breath. It's His life breath. You say, this is my life air, this is my life, this is my very life. That's the Vedas are Krishna's, it's His own breath. It is not different from Krishna Himself. And the Brahmanas, they are Krishna is dear to these Brahmanas, even though the Brahmanas, not all the Brahmanas are directly worshipping Krishna. Just because the Brahmanas imbibe this one qualification of preservation, they become very dear to Krishna. Because they are preserving his words. Through these words, when they are preserved, the sincere souls and the acharyas, they take advantage of this and help people attain to Krishna consciousness. So, okay, I will stop here. We saw very few slides today, and there's more on to preservation as to how these. It's not the Brahmanas were just preserving by chanting, how they chanted, what they chanted. We look into that further. Later it will come.
Chanted backwards.
Then you'll see. You'll see. We have examples and videos and things like that. Okay? Alright, so tomorrow we will look at the fifth Veda, the Puranas and the Itihasas. And further classifications. The Upavedas, what is Nyaya, and things like this. Okay?
Bhagavatam is Nyaya.
Any questions, comments?
Is the Bhagavatam Nyaya?
Yes, Prabhu. But he raised his hand.
Okay,
I have two questions. The first question is, we're talking about that to learn what's in the Vedas, there's spiritual knowledge, you have to have a teacher. But then nowadays it seems like, you can just go to like any ISKCON bookstore and get whatever book you want and read it. And then it seems like the devotees are very learned in that way. So like there doesn't seem to be a principal guru there, but they seem very learned.
So they seem very learned, but in those books it's also stated that you should approach a spiritual master. So their learning is displayed by their activities, what you practice, right? You learn. Do you hold yourself to your learning? You hold yourself to the same standard of knowledge that is described in the books? If yes, then you should accept, because Prabhupada says so many places that one must accept a bona fide spiritual master. Right? So you should do that. Then when you accept a bona fide spiritual master, then you will understand what you have to learn further from that bona fide spiritual master. Without a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot make advancement. You can buy Srila Prabhupada's books, but if you don't accept a bona fide spiritual master, you are very fortunate that you accepted Srila Prabhupada's books, but in one sense, having come so close, it's also unfortunate that you don't accept a major instruction of Srila Prabhupada in his books. Okay, then Prabhupada is very merciful and this and that. Yeah, but that's up to Prabhupada. How Prabhupada is going to deal with that is up to him. But we know that if Prabhupada said clearly that if you follow the instructions of the Acharya, you get Krishna. So that's sure. If we follow his instructions, we will get Krishna. We find that generally material desires, they are not so easy to remove. You have to have a bona fide spiritual master to take those material desires. They are hidden deep within. And the spiritual master, when you accept a spiritual master, then he appears in so many forms and ways and instructs. That's 11th canto talks a lot about this. Yes, oh wait, you said something.
Just talking more about what Prabhuji was saying, that many people they've concocted this theology, that Prabhupada is a guru and the only guru and after him nothing else. And also they have this quote from Srila Prabhupada that once they read my books they are initiated. Right. But I was just wondering, by that initiated means that they're starting, the process is beginning, right? It doesn't mean that they've received, become a disciple, or the minute they receive a book they become Prabhupada's disciple.
The definition of Diksha, Divya Jnanam Tato Dadyat, Purva Papasya Shamshaya, Dikshe Disa Proktas, Deshika Istatra Kovidai. So, Divya Jnanam Tato Dadyat. The divine knowledge, transcendental knowledge is given. And when that happens, Purva Papasya Samshaya, because all the sinful sins are eradicated. How is it that the sins are eradicated? The spiritual master takes the sins, yes. But the sins are also eradicated by practice of that knowledge. You don't commit sinful activities again. Therefore you become sinless when you accept a spiritual master. Purva Papasya Samshaya. This is called Diksha. So when you read Prabhupada's books, you have that transcendental knowledge. You start practicing. You accept a spiritual master and you proceed and you are expected to be sinless. In this way, the process of initiation is begun by reading Srila Prabhupada's books. Certainly, Srila Prabhupada is a very unique acharya. And just like in this, and again, everything should be understood in line with tradition. This is one major fault. One of the reasons of this seminar is to understand the value of tradition. How the Vedas are received. How this divine knowledge has been handed down for millennium from the beginning of creation. And we, some greenhorns, have figured something else out. The same process applies. Prabhupada is an acharya who comes in that same line. He follows the same principles. That's what makes him an acharya. So it's not that you just pop out. It's not some new thing. Yes, according to timeless circumstance, different things are changed. But the principle remains the same. So, just like traditionally, Guru Maharaj explains, Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, he explains that how in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, everyone says, Adiyan Ramanuja Das. I am Ramanuja Das. I am servant of Ramanuja. And all disciples are given the name. If you are given the name Keshava, Keshava Ramanuja Das. If you are given the name, Govinda Ramanuja Das. Everyone is connected to Ramanuja Acharya is the foremost Acharya over there. So, Srila Prabhupada is like that. That his role in our Sampradaya is certainly very unique. Especially for people who come after his time. So, in that sense, Srila Prabhupada's teachings are central. All the acharyas after Srila Prabhupada are going to follow. Srila Prabhupada also did this with the previous acharyas, but Srila Prabhupada had a special role to play. In the sense that of transporting this Vedic knowledge, which was till that time more or less landlocked within India, and fulfilling the prophecy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is a very special position. And he has set the standard, so as to say. Just like Ramanuja set the standard of what is it to be a Sri Vaishnava. So Srila Prabhupada set the standard of Gaudiya Vaishnavism for future generations. And so in that sense, the process has begun. But it is not that should be taken. You have to take it in light with other statements of Srila Prabhupada. Where Srila Prabhupada said, they are disciples of my disciples, they are my grand disciples. Srila Prabhupada said this and he said that. What are you going to do? Just pick one statement and ignore the other statement? Or Srila Prabhupada just said that to satisfy his disciples? You are deriding your spiritual master. That is rascaldom. So far you said Srila Prabhupada is a transcendental personality. It is possible that he can initiate people even after his time. He do something that is unprecedented, and now you are saying, he just went to satisfy his. Something that even a normal guru, even Vaisapayana did not say, none of them did that. But Srila Prabhupada did that. He couldn't say, what is this? Just lack of understanding. You didn't get it. You didn't understand. Yes.
Just to continue this point, this topic. I mean, it can be talked about for different points.
It's pretty endless debate.
Yes. Even mundane scholars, they may have apparently knowledge, but they can't solve doubts. Because they have information, they can see, but there's certain doubts that can't be solved without a guru or a spiritual master. This is revealed through by serving the spiritual master and with the proper attitude. The spiritual master can be pleased. He actually solves the doubts. One who studies just the nature of the shastra, there'll be so many contradictions. What are you going to do? You have to go to some solving those doubts.
Yeah.
One thing that says this, one thing that says that. You can't, logically speaking,
it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense.
Information is not realization.
There are Bhagavad Gita. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena seva. You're supposed to ask questions and receive answers. Where are you going to ask questions? How you will receive answers? Just imagine something. How Prabhupada is explaining something, you imagine something else.
And anyone who's sincere,
Yeah, they will know.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's like, you know you have that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really but I ask someone, like, no matter how many times I read it, it's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense.
Okay. Any more questions or comments online? Yes, no. You have something else?
Oh, yeah. The other question was, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna to rise above the Vedas and be transcendental to the three.
Correct.
So, like, how do we understand that in the context of, like, Krishna saying that the Vedas, they're very good and he speaks to Vedas and this and that? Because the Vedas are so important and so needed for society, and he's telling Arjuna to rise above them.
Sorry, Jairam? Yes. Yeah. But let me answer. Yeah. Well, I muted himself. Okay. Anyways, so to that question, I mean, we discussed how the three kanda, you have to rise above karma kanda, jnana kanda, and upasana kanda.
But I can hear on Facebook. So essentially, my question is, you also talked about how.
I'm hearing you.
There's a delay on the Facebook.
Yeah.
Delay on Facebook.
It's always a delay on Facebook.
Okay.
Like that, but you're more.
I can hear him on WebEx. I don't know why WebEx is too many things going on. But the thing is, Zoom is only 40 minutes. It's not going to work for me.
He's paying me.
I guess.
I did a Zoom into Adelaide. I moved over like 15
So the
minutes.
thing is that essentially, Srila Prabhupada, some devotees have this idea that Srila Prabhupada comes, and gives instruction through the heart. And they say that, he come in other forms, not just in books, because, the Paramatma is in the heart, sometimes he gives the idea. Now, considering that, he's already given his books, and we have to follow that, is there pramana for it? If the Guru can actually, a person like Srila Prabhupada can come and change what he had already given in the Shastra?
I don't think that makes any sense.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're audible. I can hear you. I don't think that makes any sense because, it doesn't make any sense because why Srila Prabhupada said something and then he comes in the heart and changes it. He comes in my heart and says that I changed over there, but that fellow's a rascal. So he told me in my heart that what he said in his heart was nonsense. There's no endless limit to this. What's the method of verification that you received it in your heart? There's no method of verification. The point is the Vedas are so structured that there is a check balance system, Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. That check balance system is always there. And you will find, we'll be looking more into this. How there are so many check balance systems, it's so locked that if one link in the chain is missing, then immediately, the scam is exposed.
Yeah.
So this is Krishna's system. It's very perfect. You can't mess with it. So no, there's no pramana for that because the Guru can give an instruction in your heart, but it has to be in line with what he said, what Shastra says, what Sadhu says.
Yeah.
Can't be like right now Prabhupada comes and says, okay, from tomorrow you offer chicken to Krishna.
In your heart.
In your heart, you told me that you offer chicken,
Yeah.
And so, it doesn't make any sense.
In your heart, Prabhupada all of a sudden says that forget.
Anyways, so coming to your question, Kalki, the point is that the Vedas need to be preserved for the benefit of humankind. We will see that. The Vedas are knowledge in general. They offer both material and spiritual development. And better, Because right now, you see the problem with the modern civilization is it's disconnected from the Vedas. Even material enjoyment is miserable over here because you don't know, even the demons don't even know how to materially enjoy. The difference between the demons of this world and the subterranean planets is that in the subterranean planets they use the Vedas to enjoy. So it's a little better. So at least there is some enjoyment there. Here there is nothing. What is this enjoyment? It's completely nonsense. It's miserable. So, and we will read actually in the next quote how Prabhupada mentions that all men are not equal. Therefore, the Vedas are given in such a manner that different people are at different stages and different benefits are offered to them and they're ultimately connected to Krishna consciousness. Eventually. Might take several lifetimes also. But at least they are rising above in this cycle of evolution, not going down. Here, we were just hearing a quote of Srila Prabhupada, where Prabhupada was saying that, this is in a lecture in 1976 in Mayapur, I believe, where Prabhupada was saying, one time fall down millions of years.
Millions.
One time if you miss, and he's talking about devotees. He said, one time you fall down, this lifetime you miss. Millions of years before you get your next chance. Across millions of years. That's how long it might take for us to even get that. Then I was wondering, what about this quote where it said, Bhagavad Gita, where it is said, what is that? Suchinam Srimatam Gehe Yoga Brashto Vijayate. Okay, Suchinam Srimatam, you will get it. When you will get it, it's not said. Does it mean you will get next year after you die? Whatever you have accumulated has to be enjoyed and whatever, who knows. Prabhupada said, millions of years. It is shocking. We'll miss the era of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, It's like, what will happen?
Yeah, you go to the heavenly planets.
You're finished. You're God. It's over. Blink of an eye and that's it. Millions of years. Oh, Brahma has a lot of years. So millions of years is not much in Brahma's time, You can go. So, this is very risky. One time you fall down. So, the point is in the Vedas, you're prevented from falling down. The whole system is that, people don't fall down. Whatever situation you are, even if you are outright materialist, you try to elevate yourself. And devotees, this is why we are in a precarious situation, because we have come from non-Vedic backgrounds. And our samskaras are heavily non-Vedic. When we are trying to practice Krishna consciousness. When we fall down, we commit really bad mistakes.
We fall down hard, man.
And those mistakes have reactions. But when you establish, why did Srila Prabhupada want to establish Varnashrama Dharma? It's not that in Varnashrama Dharma there would be economics. There would be an economy. There would be vendors. And Prabhupada said devotees are not, people don't have to chant 16 rounds if they come onto the farm. In fact, Prabhupada even made controversial statements. It's not controversial if you understand it, they even meet. Just to elevate them gradually. That this fall down will not happen. This type of fall down will not happen. Brutal. Otherwise you see great devotees executing amazing, fantastic devotional feats. And then you see them committing an activity that even a regular meat eater in Chandala in Vedic society will not do. You see, Chandala, horrible, Mrigari. Really? But even he had respect for Narada Muni. He spoke with him politely. How is that possible? He was part of the Vedic society. And Narada Muni says, if you do this, you will commit sin, you will go to hell. I'll go to hell. He actually believed it. Why would you believe that? I'm having fun here. What's your problem? How did he have that faith? These are points to consider. So, we should think about this. Anyways, I think, you quickly state whatever you want to state. We should finish.
I thought that verse is the Vedas deal most of it.
Yeah, the three gunas. Yeah.
He's pushing him, and that's apparently to like Jnana, and rise above the karma kanda.
Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna, our Acharya has explained, Prabhupada writes in the purport, you have to become Krishna conscious.
Yeah, that's the real understanding.
So that's it, because yes, the Upanishads deal with that. The Upanishads talk about how you're supposed to elevate yourself above the three gunas. It does talk about that. But ultimately, you see, even the Upanishads and the Vedanta Sutra, it's accessed by people in the mode of goodness, and sometimes they tend to remain on that if they don't come to Krishna consciousness. They don't arise from the Shuddha platform to the Shuddha Sattva. Sorry, the Sattva platform to the Shuddha Sattva platform. So, yeah. That okay?
Yeah.
Alright. Alright, okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.